Okay, this is capital budgeting, problem number 5. We're going to try to get 6 and 7 done also. Okay, Gold Diggers is considering a project that will produce cash inflows of $240,000 a year for 3 years, followed by $152,000 for the following 2 years. What is the internal rate of return? If the initial cost of the project is $850,000, what about if it's $1 million? Okay, this is a pretty simple problem, straightforward, since you've got that calculator that figures out all that stuff nicely. But let's just go through it real quickly, because I want to show you a couple things that, okay, so second CF, that gets you the CF, then second CE clears it, second FV. Okay, so basically it's saying that the initial cost is $850,000. Remember, it's got to be a negative number, 850,000, because that's cash out of your pocket right off the bat. Remember, these are cash flows. It's okay, arrow down. Now it says $240,000 for 3 years, so 240,000. Enter the frequency. Now instead of 1 and doing it 3 different times, why don't we put in 3? Okay, because now it's for 3 periods. Cash flow 2 is $152,000 for 2 years, 152,000. Make sure you hit enter. Down arrow, and we want it for 2 periods. Okay, and it says what is the internal rate of return? So we hit IRR, and then we hit compute. So it is 7.2%. That's the answer for part A, but the second part says what about if the initial cost is $1 million? Instead of inputting all that stuff, you can go to cash flows. Here's your initial cash flow, $850,000, make it $1 million. Remember, make this negative. That's the most important thing. Enter, arrow down, there's the first cash flow for 3 years, second cash flow for 2 years, arrow down, hit IRR. Now remember, it's got your old number, but you got to hit compute. And so it's 0.87%. So that's the two answers, 7.2% and 0.8%. That's problem number 5. Problem number 6. Let's grab that real quick. Okay, problem number 6. It says, consider the following cash flows and a 10% cost of capital. Which rule would you apply to determine if this project would be accepted? Okay, they already asked you in another problem between IRR and NPV, which would you use? NPV is the preferred one of all of them because it tells you what your net present value is, your net profit or net loss. IRR just tells you at one point you break even, that you have 0. So you can use that because you can say, okay, if it tells you you break even at 10%, that means at 9% you're going to make money, but it doesn't tell you how much. At 11% you're going to lose money. Net present value tells you at a certain cost of capital what you're going to make. Okay, and so you just plug these in. It's really simple. There's nothing trick to it. It just, know that you use net present value. In this case it was $13,925. You would accept the project because it's $13,000 positive. Okay, problem number 7. There is a problem with number 7. Let's read the problem real quick. The net present value of a project is, okay, this is there's a couple problems with this. It says the net present value of a project is $8,216 at a 14% discount rate. Find the initial cost of the project if the firm's profitability index is 1.03. Okay. Profitability index is basically the present value of future cash flows over the initial cost. Okay, he gives you in this term net present value. Okay, remember the difference between net present value and present value. Present value is taking the future cash flows and discounting them back to year 0 to get the present value of those future cash flows with the required return rate, cost of capital rate, whatever you want to call it. Net present value is doing that exact same thing, getting the present value of those cash flows and back to year 0 and then subtracting your initial cost or your initial investment. Two different things. Because net present value is basically, present value is what those cash flows are worth in year zero when you discounted them at a certain rate. Net present value is taking those present values discounted to year zero and subtracting your initial cost. The only way those two things would be the same is if there was zero initial cost. If it was just future cash flows, then they would be the same. So that's kind of confusing in the first place. The second place, you take his formula, the formula out of the book, and your answer should be $7,676.69. Your professor has $273,867. I have no idea where he got that number from. Matter of fact, this problem actually shows up on the internet on a couple different tutor pages, and they all have the same answer. So I don't know where he got this from. I think it's a typo because I can't make any sense out of that. You can't figure out a net present value. There's no way you can figure out the initial cost if you don't know the number of years in the cash flows. So anyway, as far as I'm concerned, I think this is just a typo. This is the way you'd figure it out. The present value, the future cash flow. So you take, he says net present value, but it's really the present value of the future cash flows. And that's in the formula. You put that over the initial cost, which they don't give you. And they tell you that the profitability index, PI, is 1.03. So then you convert it to this to actually make it work out with the numbers you have. And then that's what the answer should be. I'm not sure. I think it's just a typo in this point. So that is problems 5, 6, and 7.